time. Trooper said, the answer to this last question will determine whether or not you're drunk and go to jail. Was Mickey Mouse a cat or a dog? All right, our next speaker is Megan Eddings. She's the founder and CEO of Accel Lifestyle in Houston, Texas. She says that entrepreneurship found her when she met with a common household problem, stinky laundry. Tired of throwing away her husband's workout clothes because they smelled, she became obsessed with creating a better solution. With her background in chemistry and biochemistry, Megan invented a sustainable antibacterial and anti-stink fabric. Besides inventing a textile backed by science, it was just important to have a 100% ethical supply chain. The only way to accomplish this was to have everything sourced and made in the USA. Hooray. Megan's work is she's going to tell us about her entrepreneurial journey with her new technology and how she has had to pivot based on opportunities that have arisen. Megan's work is being recognized as she has won first place in the Houston Mayor Turner's Best New Product in his business competition. She's also been recognized as top 3 startups in the USA by Inc. magazine, in Houston Business Journal's 40 Under 40, and the 2022 Top 50 Most Inspiring Women by Houston Woman magazine. She even has a day named after her, May 24th, for her philanthropy work in Houston. She holds a BS in chemistry with specialization in biochemistry from the University of Virginia. Go! That's what I was wondering. How many were going to say Cavaliers and how many were going to say Wahoos? All right, either one works. Let's welcome Megan to share an entrepreneur's creed with us.
When they announced the 40 Under 40, I'm like, yeah, that was a few years ago. But we'll still go with it. Megan Eddings here. I'd say 95% of the faces are new, which is really exciting, which means you haven't heard the story before. And my whole purpose in ever sharing my story is that you take away something personal from it. Something that you can actually say, oh, I can relate to that, now I'm going to maybe make some changes or see things differently just by me sharing stories. So I'll start, I'll run 30 minutes. When you stand up, boom. If I don't go there, yes. But yeah. So we'll start with my UVA. So UVA, chemistry, biochem. I was 100% sure I was going to major in chemistry. Since 10th grade, I loved it. Since the first class that I took. Had no idea what I was going to do with it. But just throughout the UVA career, I said I want to work in a lab, which you can tell by my personality definitely fits perfectly for a science lab. You know, you get to wear a lot of great fashion, white lab coat. You know, you talk to a bunch of people, petri dishes. So I actually worked at a lab studying proteins and how they affect cancer cells at Brown University. And I thought I would do that the rest of my life. Until one day I walked out and I said, I can't be doing this the rest of my life. I'm just way too outgoing, and I was exhausted every day. And I didn't realize this back then, but a lot of times when you're exhausted every day, it's not because you're not getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep, it's because you're not happy. And so I said that, at a young age in my 20s, and I'm like, you know what, God? I said, just show me the way of something else. There has to be something else, and let's figure it out. So I meet this guy, and he said, you'd be great in this thing called medical equipment sales. I'm like, what's that? You get to dress? Cool. They give you a car. They give you a phone. They give you a computer. And my first cell phone I actually got after college, so I'm hearing about technology in the younger generation. So I worked for Siemens Medical, which is what brought me to Houston, Texas. I hail from Rhode Island, so if you're hearing a weird accent, I spent half my life basically in Rhode Island, the other half basically speaking in Texas. So I did medical equipment sales for 14 years, and I loved it. Everything about it. I even loved my boss. I didn't become an entrepreneur because I was miserable at work. So, 31 years old, I'm 42 now. I was at a meeting, just like we're all doing with a customer. It was a Tuesday. I was on Kirby Drive in Houston, Texas. And I looked down at my phone, and I know the guy really well. And I looked down at my phone, and I see a missed call from my mom and my brother. That's weird. My brother's an electrician, and he wasn't allowed to use his phone during the day. He's always out. Intuition told me, Megan, excuse yourself, go outside. So I go outside, and every time I tell the story, it gets me choked up. But my dad just had a massive heart attack and died. The brother who called me, he and my dad were just raking leaves in the yard, and Dad just died. So of course, life got turned upside down. And flew home, and we're very close to our priest back home, and every eulogy I've ever really gone to, usually it's read by the priest. And so the priest said, someone in your family's going to read, your dad's eulogy. And of course, being in sales, and Dad and I were best friends, I was the chosen person. So I give my dad's eulogy. I remember sitting in the computer room and surrounded myself with candles and Green Bay Packers paraphernalia. Dad was a huge cheesehead. Makes no sense because we're from Rhode Island. That's another story entirely. And so I gave his eulogy, and my personality 100% came from him. Super outgoing, always helped people, loved food, and I had people laughing and crying and all the emotions. And then 2 weeks later, I'm still back home in Rhode Island, and just like the day I walked out of Brown, I had that feeling like I can't be doing this anymore. It's not filling my cup or whatever. I don't think I had the actual thought, more feeling. 2 weeks after Dad passed, I had this literally awakening epiphany. I just stood up there for 30 minutes, gave my dad's eulogy. Never once did I bring up his job. And he worked for the same company 33 years doing the same thing, sandblasting submarines up in Groton. Never brought up his job. Didn't do it on purpose. He worked 6.5 days a week just to put food on the table when we were kids. So I didn't leave it out because it wasn't important, but maybe I did subconsciously leave it out because it wasn't important. And so at that moment, I said to myself, I love medical equipment sales, but I'm going to meet the maker someday. I do not want someone saying, ooh, she was the best sales rep ever. She sold 300,000 x-ray machines or whatever. So the same feeling I had when I was in my 20s was, God, show me the way. 2 months later, I went on a blind date. This is like a blind date. This is not that long ago, only 11 years ago. The guy had 0 social media, so I couldn't stalk him beforehand. So I walk into the bar, and we actually went to a restaurant. He called me, actually, didn't text me on our first, conversation. And I see this super good-looking guy sitting at the bar. And I was single for 9 years in Houston, dating like a part-time job. And so I see this super attractive guy. He's now my husband. He's the one with the super stinky workout clothes. So who would have ever thunk that, I'm like, show me the way, God, there's got to be more. And then it's this guy, blind date, workout clothes. And so my mom probably still says the rosary over it, but we started living together in sin before we got married. We were engaged, and I started washing his workout clothes. And he, to the day, showers more than anybody I know, 2-3 times a day. Way more than I do. And I couldn't believe that I'm selling $3 million for one MRI machine like it's no big deal, and we didn't have workout clothes that don't stink. It just blew my mind away. My parents, they're not entrepreneurs. No one in my family is. Parents didn't go to college. This was just something that kept me up. I got obsessed, and the word obsessed was it. And so just started, working and, Googling research. So I got to put my science hat back on and figure out from a scientific perspective, why do our clothes smell? And he's not in here, but the first person I ever reached out to was David Sasso, who used to be of Bueller Yarns. And I found him on Google because I never heard of this thing called Supima until we bought a t-shirt, maybe about 6 months prior, my husband and I. And so I'm like, Supima. If I'm going to develop a fabric, it has to feel good. I don't want it to feel like I didn't know these words back then, like a synthetic fabric. I want it to be soft and luxurious, but still odor resistant. And David Supima, that's probably what I should call him. David basically just introduced me to the nice folks at Fiber. It used to be Fiber and Yarn, and then Unify, Contempora, and it took about 3.5 years, and I created the fabric with the team. The thing that I still find shocking, and we're getting better is not great, but it's better, is that people were like, oh man, it took you a long time to create the fabric. Oh my God, 3.5 years. It took almost just as long to find an ethical, made in USA quality supply chain. Just fabric in a t-shirt. It's not like I'm creating electronics or anything. And so I really want to get the point across. Every single one of you that is sitting in here, you do your day job every day, whether it's a lubricant, a fiber, a machine, And it's very rare that you probably get the opportunity to hear from someone that if you were not doing your job every day, I wouldn't be standing up here as an entrepreneur with a Made in USA textile business. So I want you to know that I greatly appreciate everything you all are doing, not only for me, but also for the future textile and apparel leaders and creators of the United States. So your job is not small, it's meaningful. So I created the fabric and I launched Accel Lifestyle in 2019, August 2019. And I'm thinking, it's funny, someone mentioned Lululemon. And they're like, if you would have asked me back then, because I don't do anything small, you know, what do you want to do? What's your company going to be like? And I'm like, we're going to be bigger than Lululemon. Everything's going to be ethically made and everything's going to have science, backed by science fabric. Perfect. Well, then that thing, the pandemic, happens. And I can tell you what road I was driving down in Houston, Texas, when we had the toilet paper shortage. And here I am doing, you know, Made in USA t-shirts. They're not cheap, they're like $70 a t-shirt. And I'm thinking to myself, who's going to buy a $7 t-shirt if the world shuts down? Why couldn't I have created a Made in USA toilet paper? And I remember thinking, like, you know, but whatever, let's put it in the hands of God and see what happens. Less than 1 week later, I had a fashion consultant, but actually to the day I've never met her in real life. She calls me up. CDC came out the night before and said, hey, you know, healthcare workers are running out of face masks. Well, because I chose to have everything, every fiber, every stitch, made in the United States, I had thousands of rolls of fabric sitting in my warehouse, also known as my garage, and much more fabric in California. Well, California, we all know, shut down immediately. That's another story that I'll never forget. But, so I had this, again, this feeling. I worked in hospitals for 14 years in Houston, Texas. There's a lot of healthcare. I have a product that I can easily turn into a face mask because in the whole process of creating apparel, I'm nothing about pattern making, but of course you put yourself in it and you just learn. Within 3 hours, and I still don't know why I had rope in the house, my husband and I got the fabric, went to Google, found a pattern for, this is before literally anyone was doing a face mask, found a pattern. I had some healthcare friends, we got in the car, my husband and I actually made I'm not going to call it illegal, but it's not illegal. But we were essential workers that day, and we just drove to friends' houses that weren't working, that were in healthcare, to see if the mask fit. Now, it was kind of tough because they didn't put the mask on because, of course, it was COVID. So they kind of had to just hold it out in front. So I'm going to make a really long story short. We ended up getting a contract, which is one of the highlights of my life in 42 years, with the U.S. military. My family were extremely pro-military. My dad was never able to join the military because he was legally blind, but my younger brother, Matt, was a Marine, served in Iraq 3 times. So I always knew that my fabric somehow could be involved in the military. And this lady in early April, she's a gal I know in Houston, she's like, you know, I mentor this guy in Virginia who's a U.S. captain of the U.S. Navy, and he's retiring. And I mentor him just to when he joins civilian world because it's obviously very challenging. And he said, mentoring, no. He's like, we need face masks. So she's like, well, I know this girl Megan in Houston is making face masks, and you know, I'll see what she can do. By that point, we'd made about 9,000 face masks in Houston, and of the 9,000, we're probably only able to sell 4,500 because the QC was wild. We were driving the fabric around to any local sewer I could find. And so, long story short, he said, Meg, he said, actually, he's one of my best friends today. He said, Megan, we need 50,000 face masks delivered, landed in Virginia, San Diego, and Hawaii in 7 days. Can you do it? Well, I knew the contemporary people, so if I was going to call Ron and hang that over, I'm like, oh, I can do it, I can do it. I knew that we couldn't sew 50,000 masks in my fabric. There's no way we'd make it. But there were people now making masks. So literally, Ron was my next phone call. We go, bro, we need 50,000 face masks. I'm just going to fast forward. We did it in 6 days. That spread through the military like wildfire. So Marine, Navy SEALs, and Navy. There's a team. There's a team. So the people in this room, yes, you might make a lubricant or a machine part or a fiber. But there are times in life where your knowledge of people that you know for the last 20, 30 years can literally possibly save someone's life. So that was an incredible experience. So we did face masks, pretty much the whole time. Apparel sales obviously never really happened during that time. Thank God they're back up now. But it was in August of 2020. I'm in my office, my house, and I have one of those, I can't use those earbuds that just stick in your ear, I lose them, that's just me. So I have the cord up, and I can see myself going up the stairs, and I get a phone call, and at that point, my phone's ringing off the hook, and I'm answering any and every phone call. And I see it's a Texas number, and I said, hello, this is Megan, and the guy says he's a supply chain director up at a hospital in northern Texas. And I never called him that hospital, but he heard about me from a friend. He's like, hey, I heard you were making face masks, we need them. And at this point, we're kind of a well-known machine. I said, well, how many do you need? He said, 50,000. I said, no problem. If there's one thing you take away from this, and I mentioned at the beginning about sharing your own story, it is the next thing that happened. Something made me ask this guy, what else do you need? We weren't selling anything else. We weren't offering anything else. I didn't really know reliable brokers of anything else. And he said, Megan, we need reusable isolation gowns, straight-faced. I did not know what that was, but sales 101, keep your mouth shut and figure it out. So I ran over to my computer and I was asking qualifying questions, sales, keep them talking. And I Googled isolation gown and saw that it was a single-use plastic gown that covers the entire healthcare hero's body. As most of you know, they were being sourced 100% basically from Asia, not 100, maybe 95%, and they were fearful of running out. They were using about 12,000 to 15,000 of these single-use plastic gowns every single day. When it's not a pandemic, they use about 10,000 of these gowns every single day. So Contempora, again, I call them because I remember Chase saying, hey, we're doing reusable gowns, maybe for FEMA or something. So I said, Chase, mail me a gown immediately overnight. I probably should feel one, and those were reusable. So I put it on, of course I rip out any kind of tagging they had, like something that said Accel Lifestyle in or whatever, mailed it to the hospital up in Dallas. The guy said, yeah, we like the way this feels, infection control likes it. We're actually going to trial your gown, which was Contempora's gown, and your two competitors. To the day, I still have no idea who the competitors were. I didn't ask, it didn't matter. You just always focus on you doing the best, and that's what matters. So we said we need 20 gowns, and we're going to trial your gowns, the competitor's gown, for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, we will choose a winner. At the end of 2 weeks, you can imagine where the story's going. We were the winner. Now, the key was, though, this, and I never asked why. It's like if someone says yes to an order, don't ask any more questions, just shut your mouth and get the sign check and hope it clears. So I never asked why we won, and then they said, well, can you change the design of the gown? Because the gown, as they exist today, reusable, have a tie behind their neck. So if you put the gown on and you're in an area where there's possibly contamination, that's why you're covering yourself with the gown, the last thing you want to do is put your potentially contaminated sleeves behind your neck to find that tie to remove the gown. I thought to myself, it's like a child. They say these things, you're like, well, no, that actually does make sense. So I worked with their infection control team for about 8 months. Contempora, Paul, just everyone's been incredible. And so we ended up developing a reusable isolation gown with design patent pending. And we won first place as the #1 woman-owned company last November in the USA because of the gown. And here's the wild thing. LinkedIn, I posted before we even had this gown, I think we were still working on it. I put something on LinkedIn about this reusable isolation gown. 18 years ago, I said I moved to Houston to work for Siemens Medical. Did I actually say that out loud? Yeah, Siemens Medical. Well, a manager, an inside sales accessories manager, I did not know, his name's Adam Schragle. He's now the North American accessories manager. He saw that I was making a gown. He said, Meg, can you hop on a phone call? I'm like, yeah, no problem, what's up? And he said, well, hospitals aren't updating their equipment, the MRI machine. All money's going on is to protect people. And so he said, we at Siemens want to be more of a solutions provider to our customer also. It's just like solution provider. You might be selling one thing, but you know somebody else that can help. Want to be a solution provider. Can we, Siemens Medical, now called Siemens Healthineers, that's a dumb name, but I keep calling them medical. Can we carry your gown? Can we sell your gown with our 230 salespeople across the country? Of course I said yes. I got off the phone, I called mom, bawling my eyes out, fetal position, that experience, talk about full circle. So Siemens Medical, Siemens Healthineers actually now carries our isolation gowns. And the last part of the story is back to the fabric. It's called Prima. I chose the name Prima. I did not know that it meant love in Sanskrit, but I thought, well, that's nice. That's kind of what I'm all about, giving love and showing joy. Made in USA. It has been like fitting a square peg in a round hole. Even just listening to some presentation earlier about people saying, ooh, made in USA, we want that. Ooh, sustainability, we want that. As a business owner, and you all feel it too, people aren't swiping their credit cards for it, and it really is annoying to make, lack of better expression. However, it's taking a little bit of turn in the positive way, so that's what I choose to focus on. Talbot's, my mom's favorite clothing store of all time. When she worked, now that she's retired as a snowbird, she lives in Talbot's. Talbot's heard about my fabric. I had a call with them, as I probably had all the big companies you guys know. I've had the calls with all of them. And they're like, great, this is wonderful. Oh my gosh, made in USA, odor-resistant technology, et cetera, et cetera. What's the cost per yard? The retail industry, as we sit here today, is not excited about even spending a penny more on additional things. But Talbot's was. So we actually officially launched the Talbot's about 3 months ago, and they just placed their second order with us about 2 months ago, and I found out yesterday that my factory in California is ahead of schedule, so we'll be delivering the second Talbot's order next week. And the really cool thing is there's another company out there, Express, you all know that company. They actually launched a sub-brand called Up West, one word, focused on millennials, and their tagline is comfortable clothes made with mindful materials. So now if I'm hopping on a phone call with someone with that slogan, I better not say the price of my yard and you say, oh no, sorry, we're going back to the Chinese, polyester. Nope. They're interested. And so I'm working with them on changing the cotton a little bit in the fabric, but they want to start a whole made in USA line using our fabric. So it is slowly moving in the direction that we all want it, to go to the made in USA. And I know I'm coming down on time, but that's kind of the end of my story, but it's a lot longer. What was it, Seams? It was like an hour and a half. They like throw tomatoes at me. So I gave you kind of a high-level overview, but a few pieces of the talk is that you're never too old, or there's no external circumstances that should be keeping you where you are. A lot of times when we're not happy, whether it's a job, your personal life, or whatever, it's because of things that we're allowing to happen to us or the negative self-talk we're having in our head. I never in a million years thought that I'd be from Coventry, Rhode Island, now being an entrepreneur, standing in front of you all sharing my story. So it's all about finding joy, and there are shitty things. Oops, oh well. There are crappy things that happen to all of us all the time. The death of my dad, I still obviously cry about it pretty often. But if I didn't experience Dad's passing, I would not have ever realized how short and finite all of our lives are. And so that's why I am a very positive person, because we all have crappy things that happen, and you can either choose to let it keep you down long term, or you can choose to find a positive message and a positive learning lesson from that negativity. And I promise you, when you start sharing that story, you will inspire other people along your journey as well. And I'm going to close with a few things that I didn't even consciously know that I was doing. At the Seams conference, this guy, I don't know who he was, but he was sitting on that side. And so it came to the Q&A portion, and he said, he raised his hand, I don't know what it was going to be about. He said, what do you take to be so positive? And I thought, just camera rolling? No, I'm just kidding. Depends on who that is. But It got me thinking, what do I do? Are there things I do? And then I realized there are very specific things that I do. In the morning, whatever you wake up to an alarm, I'm not a morning person, so my alarm goes off. What song are you waking up to? Are you doing that annoying beep, 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 something that jolts you out of bed? No matter what, when there's a noise to wake you up, you're gonna wake up. So choose something that brings you joy. The song Ave Maria is a huge song in my family's, just in my family. I have some opera singers. Every morning I wake up to Ave Maria. I used to go grab the phone, go right to email. That took me a long time to break that habit, but it is broken. I now get out of bed, I take about 10 minutes, 10 minutes to read, either about meditation or I swear, like essentialism, about doing less but better. I read this morning. Every morning I read part of that book. And the whole point of not getting on my email is because once you get on it, you can't stop. You're in. If you're in the morning, you can't stop. And the whole point of doing something not email or not Megan related is it starts my day way outside the realm of Megan Eddings. And so I approach my day as what's going on around me versus what's going on in me. And then finally what I do, I get 9 hours of sleep a night also, I get a lot of sleep. I used to be embarrassed about it, and now I'm like, nah, that's what I need. But I wear a lot of jewelry, and this has just happened over the years, and every piece of jewelry I wear is from somebody that I love. Like this bracelet, the gold and silver one, when I was in 10th grade, my brothers and dad and I gave it to my mom. So every piece of jewelry that I put on, it takes a little bit of time. I don't sleep with jewelry, so every day I'm putting on the bracelets, all the rings, all the bling. But it's literally like putting on pieces of love from people that I love. And it's the same thing at night before I go to bed. I take it all off, and it's just that subconscious feeling of people that I love that are still part of me, even though I'm not physically with them. And so that's my entrepreneurial journey. I absolutely love being an entrepreneur. And the only reason I love it, I would say, that's not the only, there's a lot of reasons, is because of me asking for help, knowing nothing about the textile industry, nothing. And then asking for help from our dear friends at Contempora and others, and people were willing to help. I mean, people were literally willing to help and give of their 20, 30, 40 years of expertise when I had a question. And so it is my job and my goal and my passion is to help others. It was like Tanika, I met her, she was in here a minute ago, but I met her at a conference. I met Tanika, and she now asks me questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned this from Contempora, or Brad Cease, or Fiber and Yarn, or Unify. And so it's such a beautiful feeling to be able to pass down that information. So I know we had the younger panel earlier. Just keep lifting each other up, and put people in a room that look like you, but also listen to everyone's opinions, because one thing that I was raised with is, you work 8 days a week. That's just the culture that I was raised in. So the panel discussion this morning really helped me, because it's just a different way of thinking. It doesn't mean that the younger generation does any less of a great job. We just have to learn how to communicate with them better. And so that's a big takeaway for me. So thank you very much to everyone, and I'll be here for lunch if you have any questions.